Hello, and welcome to History at Night. The word pirate usually brings to mind a very specific image, doesn't it? A daring hero with a parrot on his shoulder, a treasure map in his pocket, and a sword in his hand. We imagine a life of thrilling adventure, complete freedom, and chests full of gold coins buried on a deserted island. But the real life of a pirate during their famous Golden Age, in the early 1700s, was usually not romantic at all. It was a life chosen out of desperation to escape the terrible, almost slave-like conditions on merchant ships or in the King's Navy. It was a world of extreme boredom, sickness, and hard work, only interrupted by moments of intense danger. So tonight, we will leave the legends behind and see what it was really like. We will step aboard one of these crowded wooden ships and explore the surprising democratic rules that they lived by. We'll learn about the simple food they ate, the fears they faced, and why so many ordinary men chose a short, risky life under the black flag instead of a long, unhappy one serving a king. But before we dive in, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's a simple and wonderful way to support the channel, and it means a great deal to me. I'm also always curious to know where in the world and at what time you're joining me tonight, so I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. And now settle in, let the noise of the modern world fade away, and let us travel back to a time of tarred rope, black powder, and open sea. Our story doesn't begin with a pirate. It begins with an ordinary person. Let's imagine that you are this person. You are not a hero, not a villain. You are simply a sailor, somewhere in your early 20s, and your entire world is this small, damp, wooden ship, creaking its way across the vast and empty Atlantic Ocean. It is 2 hours before dawn, and you are already exhausted. You were woken an hour ago, not by a gentle shake, but by the sharp bark of the boatswain, the senior sailor in charge of the deck crew. Your hands are raw, blistered and healed and blistered again, from hauling on the coarse, salt-stiffened ropes that control the massive sails above. The air is cold and heavy with salt spray that never seems to dry, chilling you to the bone. Every muscle in your back and shoulders aches from the relentless work of the previous day, and the day before that, and every day for the past 6 months since you left port in Bristol. This is your life on a merchant vessel in the year 1716. It is not a life of adventure. It is a life of unending, back-breaking labour. You and the few dozen other men on board are a tiny human island in an endless ocean, and your work never stops. You are constantly adjusting the rigging, climbing high into the masts on swaying ropes to furl or unfurl sails, with nothing but 100 feet of empty air and churning sea below you. You work the pumps to expel the foul, stagnant bilge water that constantly seeps into the hull. You scrub the decks, you mend the sails, you tar the ropes. You do this day in and day out, in blistering sun and freezing rain. For this ceaseless labour, you are paid a pittance, and even that payment is not guaranteed. As a sailor on a merchant ship, you are not paid your wages until the voyage is completely over. If the ship sinks, you get nothing. If you die of disease or accident halfway through the journey, your family back home gets nothing. And if you make it all the way back to port, the captain, a man with absolute authority, can easily cheat you. A captain can invent fines for supposed infractions, a misplaced tool, a moment of perceived laziness, and deduct them from your hard-earned wages. You have seen it happen on every voyage. Men who worked for a year straight, only to end up with a few shillings in their pocket, just enough to get drunk for a night before signing on to another ship to do it all over again. The food is worse than the pay. Your daily ration is a biscuit, called hardtack, which is little more than flour, water and salt, baked into a cracker as hard as a piece of wood. It has to be soaked in water or beer just to be chewed, and it is almost always infested with weevils, small black beetles that lived in the barrels of flour. The meat is salted beef or pork stored for months in barrels, so saturated with salt that it has to be scraped and soaked for hours before it can be choked down. The water is the worst of all, stored in wooden casks where it quickly becomes stagnant, green and slimy. This diet of salt and starch, with no fresh fruit or vegetables, leads inevitably to scurvy. You have seen men suffer from it. You have seen their gums bleed, their teeth fall out, their old wounds reopen, their minds grow confused, all from the lack of simple nourishment. And looming over all this hardship is the constant threat of discipline. The captain of a merchant ship is a king in his floating kingdom. His word is law, and his primary tool of enforcement is the whip. The cat-o'-nine-tails, a whip with multiple knotted lashes, can turn a man's back into a ruin of bleeding flesh for the smallest offence. Arguing with an officer, being too slow to climb the rigging, or even just being disliked by the captain, is enough to warrant a flogging. There is no trial, no appeal, just the sharp whistle of the lash and the brutal, searing pain. You know you are lucky, in a way. You chose this life. Many sailors in the King's Royal Navy did not. They were pressed into service, kidnapped from the streets of a port town, or taken from another ship at sea and forced to serve. In the Navy, the discipline is even harsher, the work just as hard, and you have the constant added terror of being killed in a naval battle, your world exploding in a shower of cannonballs and wooden splinters. So this is your world, a world of constant work, terrible food, stolen wages, and arbitrary, brutal punishment. Your future holds nothing more than an endless cycle of these miserable voyages until the sea or sickness finally claims you. Piracy to you is not a romantic notion. It is a whisper, a rumour, a story told by other sailors in hushed tones. It's a dangerous path, yes, but it is a different one. One grey morning, as you are squinting at the horizon, you see it. A strange sail, a fast-moving ship, closing on your vessel with an unnerving speed. It flies no colours you recognise. As it draws closer, the men around you begin to murmur, their faces pale with fear. They know what this might be, but for you, buried beneath the fear, a different feeling begins to stir. A small, dangerous spark of something else entirely. The ship grows larger, slicing through the waves, with a purpose your own vessel lacks. It's a sloop, a smaller, faster, and more nimble ship than your bulky merchantman. You notice it's crowded with men, far more than would be needed for a simple trading voyage. The captain of your ship is shouting orders, his voice tight with fear. The men around you move with a panicked energy. Then the moment of truth arrives. A puff of white smoke blossoms from the side of the approaching sloop. A second later, you hear the deep boom of a cannon, and a cannonball skips across the water just in front of your ship's bow. This is a warning shot, a clear and universal signal on the high seas that means stop your vessel, or the next shot will not be a warning. Your captain is no fool. He knows his ship is slower, his crew is smaller, and his few small cannons are no match for the firepower of a dedicated pirate vessel. To fight would be suicide. His cargo is insured by wealthy men in London. His life is not. He gives the order to strike the colours, to lower your ship's flag in a sign of surrender. The tension on deck turns from panic to a kind of grim, fearful resignation. The pirate sloop skillfully manoeuvres alongside, and with a crash of grappling hooks and rope, the two ships are bound together. And then they are aboard. They spill over the railing not as a disorganised mob, but as a confident, organised team. You see now that they are sailors just like you. Their faces are weathered by the same sun and sea. Their hands bear the same calluses from the ropes. But there is a difference. They move with an air of freedom and confidence you have never seen on a merchant ship. They are well armed, each man carrying a pistol, tucked into his belt and a sword at his side. They quickly disarm your ship's officers and gather your crew on the main deck. You stand there, heart pounding, expecting the worst. But there is no immediate violence. Instead, a man steps forward who is clearly in charge, though he isn't the captain. This is the quartermaster. On a pirate ship, he was the second in command, the man who represented the crew's interests, handled discipline, and was responsible for dividing any plunder. He was often more powerful than the captain in day-to-day life. His voice is calm and direct. He tells your crew that they have no interest in harming any ordinary sailor. They are here for the cargo, and for anyone who wishes to join their company. He lays out the offer. You can stay with your captain, continue your voyage, and face the same life of misery and poverty you have always known. Or you can leave it all behind. You can join them. You can become one of them, a free man, entitled to an equal share of every prize they take. You look at the faces of your crewmates. For most, fear wins out. They have families, homes, and a deep abiding fear of the hangman's noose. But you see a few others, men like you, with little to lose, and no future to look forward to, and you can see the same spark in their eyes that you feel in your own chest. The choice, you realise, is truly yours. The pirates don't want to force you. They have escaped tyranny themselves. They have no interest in commanding a crew of unwilling captives. They want volunteers, brothers who will willingly fight alongside them. So you weigh your life in that moment. On one side, a guaranteed future of back-breaking work, spoiled food, and the sting of the whip, all for wages you might never see. On the other, the promise of plunder, of freedom, of respect. It is the choice between a long, slow misery and a life that will likely be short, but at least will be your own. You and 2 other sailors step forward. The quartermaster grins. He gestures for you to cross over to the pirate ship. As you climb over the railing, leaving your old vessel and your old life behind, one of the pirates hands you a tin mug filled with a cloudy alcoholic liquid. It is grog, a simple drink of watered-down rum, sometimes mixed with lime or sugar. It is the lifeblood of sailors everywhere, but this mug tastes different. It tastes of freedom. Your old ship, now poorer by a few crewmen and a hold full of cargo, detaches and slowly sails away. You stand on the deck of a pirate vessel, surrounded by the so-called enemies of all mankind. You are now one of them. The initial relief begins to fade, replaced by a new pressing reality. You have joined their society, but you do not yet know its laws. You stand on the deck of your new ship, the taste of grog still on your lips. The initial wave of adrenaline and relief has passed, replaced by a quiet uncertainty. You have escaped the tyranny of your old captain, but what have you joined? How can a ship full of men who have rejected all authority possibly function without tearing itself apart? The answer comes a short while later. The quartermaster, the man who invited you aboard, gathers you and the other new recruits. He unrolls a sheet of parchment, its edges worn from use. This, he explains, is the foundation of their society. These are the ship's articles of agreement, more famously known as the Pirate Code. You learn immediately that this is not a set of rules imposed from above. On this ship there is no absolute king. Before any voyage, the entire crew gathers together. They debate, they argue, and they vote on every single rule written on this page. Every man from the captain down to you, the newest recruit, has an equal say. The captain is elected and can be removed from command by a majority vote if the crew is not satisfied with his leadership. You have just joined not merely a ship's crew, but a floating democratic republic. It's a concept so radical, so contrary to the world you know, that it takes a moment to fully grasp. The quartermaster begins to read some of the key articles aloud, ensuring you understand the contract you are about to sign. First, and most important, every man has an equal vote in the affairs of the moment. This means any major decision, whether to attack a ship, where to sail next, or what punishments to hand out, is decided by the crew as a whole. Second, no prey, no pay. You will receive no wages. Your payment is a fair share of whatever is plundered. The articles specify exactly how the loot will be divided. The captain might receive 2 full shares, the quartermaster perhaps 1.5. Skilled men like the ship's surgeon or carpenter might also get a slightly larger portion. But you, as a regular sailor, are entitled to 1 full share. No deductions, no tricks. You will get exactly what you are owed, every single time. Third, there are rules of conduct. Any quarrel between 2 men must be settled on shore, with pistols or swords, to prevent disruptive fighting on the crowded ship. There are to be no women allowed on board, another rule designed to prevent jealousy and conflict among the crew. And every man is expected to keep his pistols and sword clean and ready for action at all times. Fourth, lights out at 8 o'clock. You learn this isn't a strict bedtime, it's a critical fire safety rule. After 8 p.m, there are to be no open flames from candles or lamps for gambling or drinking. On a wooden ship filled with barrels of gunpowder and tarred ropes, a single careless flame could doom everyone. And then comes the most surprising article of all, a system of compensation for injuries sustained in battle. This is their version of insurance. A man who loses his right arm in a fight might be awarded 600 pieces of 8, the common Spanish silver dollar that was the main currency of the seas. The loss of a leg might be worth 500 pieces of 8, an eye, 100. This money was paid out from the ship's treasury before the rest of the plunder was divided. It was a promise that your brothers would take care of you, a level of care and respect unimaginable on the merchant ship you just left. After reading the articles, the quartermaster lays the parchment on the lid of a barrel. He looks at you and the other new men. This is the final step. To join the brotherhood, You must sign. You take the offered quill, dip it in ink, and make your mark on the document. By doing this, you are entering into a sacred contract. You are agreeing to live by these rules, to fight for your brothers, and to accept the severe punishments for breaking your oath. You have now formally sworn your allegiance. You are a full member of the crew, with a right to a vote and a right to a share of any prize. You are part of a society of outlaws, governed by its own surprisingly fair and orderly laws. But a society is more than just its rules. It is also the physical space it occupies. With the formalities over, you take your first proper look around, seeing the ship not as a captive anymore, but as a resident. This is your home now, the very same sloop that ran down your old vessel with such ease. You realise now why it was chosen. It's not a massive warship, but it's lean and fast, a captured merchant vessel that has been transformed from a simple workhorse into a predator of the sea lanes. Your new crew has already made modifications. You see more cannons on deck than a merchant ship would ever carry, their black iron muzzles staring out from newly cut gun ports. The decks have been cleared of any unnecessary clutter to make more room for fighting. This vessel has been hardened. You walk the main deck, taking in the controlled chaos. There are thick coils of rope neatly tied down. There are pyramids of iron cannonballs secured with netting. You see spare spars, the long wooden poles used to hold the sails, lashed to the sides of the ship, ready to replace any that might be broken in a storm or a battle. You close your eyes for a moment to simply listen. You hear the constant deep groan of the ship's timbers, like an old man's sigh. You hear the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the hull, a sound that will be with you day and night. Above, you hear the sharp snap of the canvas sails as they catch the wind, and the high, lonely cry of a seabird. It is a symphony of wood, wind and water. The smells are just as strong. The clean, sharp scent of the salt spray mixed with the pungent, almost medicinal smell of the tar used to waterproof the ship's wood and ropes. But the real heart of the ship, you soon discover, is below deck. As you climb down the ladder into the gloom, a thick, warm and heavy air envelops you. This is the 'tween deck, the main living quarters. There are no private cabins here, no walls, no doors. This single, low-ceilinged space is where you and 80 other men will sleep. You see rows upon rows of hammocks, lengths of canvas slung from the overhead beams. They are hung so close together that you can easily reach out and touch the man next to you. You learn that hammocks were a brilliant innovation, pirates and sailors adopted from the native peoples of the Americas. Unlike a fixed bunk or a simple mattress on the floor, a hammock sways with the constant rolling motion of the ship, cradling you and preventing you from being thrown to the wet floor during rough seas. The air down here is a complex mixture of smells. It smells of unwashed bodies, of stale rum, of damp wool, and something else, a foul, sour smell coming from below. This, you are told, is the bilge. The bilge is the very bottom of the ship's hull, a dark, inaccessible space where all the foul water collects. Seawater that leaks through the planks, spilled food and drink, and all other forms of waste gather down there, sloshing back and forth into a putrid soup. Its stomach-turning smell is a constant presence, a scent that permeates the very wood of the ship. It is the defining smell of your new home. You realise that on this vessel, there is no such thing as privacy. You will eat, work, and sleep within arm's reach of 80 to 100 other men. You now understand why the ship's articles had such strict rules against fighting on board. In such a crowded and intimate space, small disagreements could easily boil over into dangerous violence if not properly managed. You find an empty space between two cannons and are shown how to sling your own hammock. As you lie back in the gently swaying canvas, you listen to the symphony of the ship's sounds, the creaking wood, the snoring men, the distant waves. You are surrounded by this new family. You know the rules, you know the layout of your new home. But what do you actually do all day? You wake to the gentle rocking of your hammock. It's dark, but you can hear the sounds of men stirring around you. Your first full day as a pirate is about to begin. The question that formed in your mind as you fell asleep, what do you actually do all day, is about to be answered. You quickly learn that a pirate's life is not one of lazy leisure, waiting for a prize to appear. A pirate ship is a complex machine, and it demands constant attention. Your day and your entire existence at sea is governed by the watch system. The crew is divided into two halves, or watches. Your half is on duty for a 4-hour shift, then off duty for the next 4 hours, in a relentless cycle that repeats all day and all night. There is no weekend, no day off. There is only the watch. During your time on watch, the work is familiar, yet different. The most important task is, of course, sailing the ship. You and your watchmates are constantly trimming the sails, pulling on ropes to adjust their angle to catch the wind in the most efficient way possible. It's a delicate art, a constant conversation between the crew, the sails, and the wind. But most of the work is maintenance. Endless, repetitive, but vital maintenance. You spend hours sitting on the deck with a mallet and a chisel, performing a task called caulking. This means hammering sticky, tarred rope fibres called oakum into the seams between the wooden planks of the deck and hull. It's a slow, tedious job, but it's what keeps the ship from taking on water and sinking. Other days you are sent aloft with a bucket of tar to coat the rigging, protecting the thick ropes from being destroyed by the relentless sun and salt spray. You scrub the decks not just to keep them clean, but to scour away the slippery green algae that grows in the damp sea air. You check the cannons, making sure they are secure, that the mechanisms are clean, and that the gunpowder stores nearby are kept perfectly dry. Sometimes you are assigned lookout duty. You climb the rigging, high up to the crow's nest, a small wooden platform at the top of the main mast. From here you are the eyes of the ship. The view is immense, a 360-degree panorama of nothing but the endless shifting blue of the ocean. Your job is to stare into that emptiness for hours, searching for the one thing that matters, another sail. It is a lonely, hypnotising task. When your 4-hour watch is finally over, you are relieved by the other half of the crew. But your time off watch is not truly for leisure. This is when you eat your rations. This is when you must find time to sleep, to gather your strength for the next shift. And this is when you perform your own personal maintenance, sharpening your knife, mending a tear in your shirt, or washing your clothes in a bucket of seawater. After 4 hours of hard physical labour, the desire for sleep is often overwhelming. The tasks themselves are nearly identical to the work you did on the merchant ship. And yet everything is different. There is no boatswain screaming insults at you. There is no officer threatening you with the whip for a minor mistake. The men work together with a quiet efficiency. They know the ship is their own. A well-maintained vessel is a faster vessel, more likely to catch a prize. A clean cannon is a weapon that will fire true when it's needed. You are not working out of fear, you are working for a shared purpose. You are a shareholder in this enterprise, and the work you do directly contributes to your own potential fortune. The mood is lighter, the conversations are freer. You are treated as an equal, a brother. The days begin to bleed into one another, marked only by the changing of the watch and the position of the sun. The rhythm of work, eat, sleep, work becomes your entire world. You realise that the great enemy on these long voyages between prizes is not the Royal Navy, nor is it the storm. It is the vast, soul-crushing boredom of the open sea. As you fall into this routine, you begin to observe the men around you more closely. You see how this society truly functions. You see that the captain is respected, and his orders are followed in battle. But in the day-to-day life of the ship, it is the quartermaster that the men listen to. It is the quartermaster who settles disputes, who distributes the rations, who seems to hold the true balance of power. As the weeks pass, you begin to truly understand the answer to the question that has been forming in your mind. How does a ship full of outlaws govern itself? You see now that it is not one man who leads, but two, in a delicate and ingenious balance of power, specifically designed to prevent the kind of tyranny you escaped. First, there is the captain. You notice that he is treated with a certain respect. He is the expert sailor, the master navigator, the man who can read the waves and the stars. His primary job is to guide the ship and to command it in battle. He is, in essence, the ship's war chief. When a potential prize is spotted on the horizon, a change comes over the ship. The democratic, almost casual atmosphere instantly sharpens. In that moment, the captain's authority becomes absolute. His orders are obeyed instantly, and without question, by every man on board. He decides the angle of attack, when to fire the cannons, and when to board. During a chase or a battle, he is the undisputed king of the vessel. This is a practical matter. In the chaos of combat, there is no time for a debate or a vote. The crew puts their trust in his skill to win the prize and keep them all alive. But here is the crucial difference. As soon as the battle is over, his absolute power vanishes. He steps back and once again becomes a man among equals. He is still the captain, but he cannot order a man flogged for a minor insult. He cannot change the destination of the ship on a whim. He cannot even claim the largest portion of the captain's cabin for himself without the crew's agreement. He was elected to his position, and if he proves to be a coward in battle or consistently fails to find prizes, the crew can hold a vote at any time and depose him, electing a new captain in his place. The true power in the day-to-day life of the ship, you learn, belongs to the quartermaster. He is the peace chief. While the captain is the crew's leader, the quartermaster is the crew's advocate. He is the voice of the men, elected to protect their interests and ensure fairness. His responsibilities are vast. He is in charge of the ship's stores, distributing the daily rations of food and water to ensure every man gets his equal share. He is the ship's judge and jury. If you have a dispute with another sailor, you do not take it to the captain. You take it to the quartermaster. He listens to both sides and makes a ruling, and his decision is respected. He also administers all punishments that the crew has voted on according to the articles. So if a man is to be flogged, it is the quartermaster, not the captain, who gives the order, removing that power of personal vengeance from the captain's hands. When a prize is taken, the quartermaster leads the boarding party. He is the one who decides what plunder is to be taken from the captured vessel, and he is the keeper of all that plunder until it can be brought to a safe port and divided. He ensures that every coin, every bolt of cloth, every barrel of wine is accounted for and shared out exactly as the articles prescribe. You now see the genius of this system. It is a separation of powers, born from the bitter experience of men who had been oppressed. They gave one man, the captain, the power to lead them in war, but they gave another man, the quartermaster, the power to protect them from that same leader in times of peace. It was a system of checks and balances that ensured no single man could ever hold absolute power over the crew again. It was a government for the people, by the people, on a floating wooden republic of outlaws. You see this system in action every day as the quartermaster moves through the ship, settling a card game dispute here, distributing the daily ration of grog there. The system works because it is built on fairness. Everyone gets their share. But as you receive your daily portion of salted beef and hardtack, a new thought comes to mind. What exactly is that share? The question of what you eat and drink is one of the most fundamental parts of your new life. You quickly learn that the standard rations on a pirate ship are at first disappointingly similar to the grim menu of the merchant vessel you so gladly left behind. The foundation of your diet is still the hardtack, the rock-hard flour and water biscuit, likely dotted with the black specks of weevils. The main source of protein is still salted meat, either beef or pork, that has been cured in barrels of brine for so long that it is tough, chewy, and overwhelmingly salty. This is supplemented by sacks of dried peas, beans, or oatmeal. It is a diet of preservation, designed to last for months in the damp hold of a ship, not for pleasure. Your drink is also much the same. Water stored in casks quickly goes foul, so alcohol is essential. The daily ration of grog, the mix of rum and water, is a treasured ritual, a moment of warmth and cheer in a long day. It makes the stale water more palatable and provides a brief escape from the monotony of life at sea. But here is where you discover the pirate's advantage. Unlike a merchant ship, which must sail from port A to port B on a strict schedule, a pirate vessel is master of its own time. Your captain is not in a hurry to deliver cargo. This gives you the freedom to supplement your diet in ways a merchant sailor could only dream of. If the ship is running low on supplies, you might stop at a small, uninhabited island. The crew will go ashore in longboats, armed not for battle, but for hunting. You spend the day tracking wild pigs or goats through the jungle. A welcome relief from the confines of the ship. The animals are brought back, and the crew builds a fire on the beach, roasting the fresh meat over a wooden grill called a boucan. The taste of fresh, unsalted meat is a luxury so profound it feels like a feast for a king. At sea you fish. Men will trail lines from the stern of the ship, hoping to catch tuna or other large fish to be shared among the crew. But the most prized catch of all is the giant sea turtle. Turtles were plentiful in the Caribbean, easy to catch while they slept on the surface of the water, and they were an ideal source of food. A single large turtle could feed the entire crew, and remarkably, they could be kept alive on their backs on the deck for weeks. This is the pirates' way, living off the sea and the land, taking what they could find. But the greatest feast, the moments of true indulgence, came after a successful capture. When you board a captured merchant ship, the first prize is not always the captain's strongbox. It is often his pantry. While your diet is one of bland survival, a merchant captain dines in style. Your crew descends upon his private stores with joyous cries. You might find barrels of fine French wine or Spanish brandy, sacks of soft white flour for baking bread, and precious casks of sugar. You might find spices that are worth a fortune: cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. Best of all, you might find live chickens, clucking in wooden coops, or even a pig or a cow, brought along for the captain's table. That night, your ship becomes a floating banquet hall. The cook, who is usually just another sailor with a bit of skill over a fire, becomes the most important man on board. The smell of roasting meat fills the air. You eat freshly baked bread instead of weevil-filled biscuits. You drink stolen wine from tin mugs, singing sea shanties with your brothers. For a few hours you live better than any king. This is the reward. This is the merry life you signed up for. You are full, for the first time in what feels like years. The ship is well stocked, and the threat of scurvy has been pushed away by fresh food. But this bounty cannot protect you from everything. A slip of a knife while working the rigging, a splintered bone from a fall, or a sudden raging fever are constant dangers. The question of what happens when you are seriously hurt or fall ill is a heavy one. In the world you left behind, a sick sailor was often seen as a useless burden. Here, among pirates, you learn that the approach is different, born from a mix of brutal necessity and surprising compassion. Most pirate ships did not have a professionally trained doctor. A surgeon was a highly valued prize, and if one was captured on a merchant or naval vessel, he was considered one of an attack's most valuable assets. The pirate crew would do everything they could to persuade him to join them, offering him a full share of the plunder and promising him good treatment. A skilled surgeon was one of the very few men a pirate crew might actually force into service, as his knowledge was a matter of life and death for everyone. But if no doctor could be found, the role of ship's surgeon fell to whichever crewman had the most relevant skills. In many cases, this was the ship's carpenter. This might seem strange, but the logic was grimly practical. The most common major surgery at sea was amputation, and no one on board was better with a saw. The carpenter knew his tools. He knew how to make a clean, swift cut, and he was not squeamish about it. On other ships, the role might fall to the cook, for he was the man most skilled with knives. The ship's medical kit was usually a captured surgeon's chest, itself a form of treasure. Inside, you would find the tools of the trade: saws for bone, sharp knives for flesh, probes for exploring wounds, and forceps for pulling out musket balls. The medicines were a mix of the effective and the dangerous. The chest would contain laudanum, which is an opiate, a powerful painkiller made from opium that could dull the senses during surgery. It might also contain mercury, which was a common but toxic treatment for venereal diseases, and a variety of dried herbs and powders for treating fevers and infections. After a battle, the main deck could be transformed into a makeshift operating theatre. Wounded men would be laid out, and the surgeon would get to work. His methods were direct and brutal. A deep cut from a sword would be stitched shut with a simple needle and thread. To stop bleeding and prevent infection in a world without antibiotics, the surgeon would perform a cauterization, sealing the wound by applying a red-hot piece of iron or a dollop of hot tar directly to the flesh. The smell of burning skin and the screams of the patient were a common aftermath to any fight. For a limb shattered by a cannonball or a musket shot, there was usually only one option: amputation. To remove the ruined arm or leg was the only way to prevent gangrene, a deadly infection that was always fatal. You would be given a large dose of rum or laudanum to numb the pain, and a leather strap to bite down on to keep from biting through your own tongue. Your crewmates would hold you down, and the carpenter surgeon would work as quickly as he could. The survival rate for such procedures was low, but it was better than the certain death of infection. Common sicknesses like fevers and dysentery could sweep through the crowded, unsanitary ship with terrifying speed. And scurvy, the disease caused by a lack of vitamin C, was a constant threat on long voyages without fresh fruit. While pirates were generally better fed than other sailors, they were not immune. But here, once again, the pirate code offered a unique form of protection. As you learned when you signed the articles, there was a system of compensation. Your crewmates would care for you as best they could. But if you lost an arm, a leg, or an eye in service to the ship, you were financially compensated for your loss. You were a brother, and you would not be abandoned. This rudimentary system of medicine and insurance was a lifeline. But the best way to avoid the surgeon's knife was to avoid trouble in the first place. This meant moving efficiently across the sea, finding prizes quickly, and knowing the route to a safe port. To do that, your ship needed more than just strong backs and sharp swords. It needed a keen mind and an understanding of the heavens. You now understand how the ship is governed, how it is maintained, and how its crew is cared for. But all of this would be for nothing if the ship could not find its way. In the seemingly endless expanse of the ocean, with no roads and no landmarks, the art of navigation was perhaps the most vital skill on board. Getting it wrong meant more than just missing a prize. It meant starvation, thirst, and being lost at sea forever. The responsibility for this crucial task fell to the captain, and if the crew was lucky, a sailing master. The sailing master was a highly skilled officer whose entire job was to know the ship's position and plot its course. On your ship, the captain himself handles this duty. He is the navigator, and the lives of the entire crew rest on his calculations. His tools are a mixture of the simple and the ingenious. His most prized possessions are his nautical charts. These are not treasure maps marked with an X. They are precious documents, hand-drawn on parchment, often stolen from the captains of captured ships. They show the outlines of coastlines, the locations of known islands, and warnings about dangerous currents or hidden reefs. They are frequently inaccurate, but they are the best guide you have. To know your direction, you have the magnetic compass. But direction is only half the problem. You must also know your speed. For this, the navigator uses a clever device called a chip log. It consists of a small, weighted piece of wood, tied to a long rope with knots tied at regular intervals. The chip is thrown from the back of the ship, and as the vessel moves forward, the rope unspools. Using a small sandglass to measure a precise amount of time, the navigator counts how many knots pass through his fingers. This tells him the ship's speed in knots, a unit of measurement still used by sailors today. With these tools, the navigator can determine your latitude, your position north or south of the equator. Using an instrument like a quadrant or an astrolabe, he can measure the angle of the sun at high noon, or the height of the North Star at night. This angle changes depending on how far north or south you are, allowing him to calculate your latitude with reasonable accuracy. But there was one great, unsolved mystery of the seas during your time: longitude, your position east or west. There was no reliable instrument, no simple trick, to know how far east or west you had travelled. This was the single biggest navigational challenge of the age. To overcome this, sailors relied on a method called dead reckoning. It was more of an art than a science. You start from a known position, for example, the island of Jamaica. You know you are sailing east thanks to the compass. You know you are travelling at 5 knots thanks to the chip log. After 24 hours, you can calculate, or reckon, your new position on the chart. You are, in theory, 120 nautical miles east of Jamaica. But this was an educated guess. A strong, unseen ocean current could be pushing you sideways. A storm could force you off course. A small error in measuring your speed could grow larger and larger over days and weeks, until your calculated position on the chart and your true position in the world were miles apart. The navigator's job was a constant, careful process of calculation, observation, and intuition. A truly great navigator also read the natural world. The colour of the water could hint at its depth. The types of birds circling the ship could indicate that land was near. The patterns of the clouds and the direction of the ocean swells could whisper secrets about distant weather systems. It was a science of reading clues that the ocean provided. You now understand the immense skill it takes to guide your floating home. Day after day, you watch the horizon, a line that never changes. The navigator's art is what gives you all hope that this emptiness will eventually end. As you scan the sea, you are no longer just looking for a ship. You are looking for a target. The cry from the crow's nest has electrified the ship. Sail ho! The captain, using his spyglass, confirms the target. A heavily loaded merchant vessel, sitting low in the water. It is the prize you have all been waiting for. Your ship, being faster and more agile, begins the chase. As you close the distance over the next hour, you see that your ship is flying the English flag, the Union Jack. This, you learn, is the first step in the hunt. Deception. It's a common trick. A pirate ship might fly the colours of any nation, or no flag at all, to appear as a friendly vessel. The goal is always the same: to get as close as possible without causing alarm, closing off the target's avenue of escape. The merchant ship's crew sees you, but they have no reason to panic yet. To them, you are just another English ship on the open sea. Then the time for pretense is over. You are close enough now. The merchant ship is within range of your cannons, and they can no longer outrun you. On your captain's command, the false flag comes down. For a moment your mast is bare. The men on the other ship must be watching, their stomachs tightening with dread, wondering who you are. And then a new flag is brought on deck. It is bundled and ready. It is attached to the rope and hoisted up the mast for all to see. It is the flag that has come to be known as the Jolly Roger. This flag is the most powerful weapon in the pirate arsenal, more powerful than any cannon. It is a tool of psychological warfare, and its message is brutally clear. You learn that the term Jolly Roger doesn't refer to just one design, but to any flag used by pirates to declare their identity. The most common flag is a simple, stark black one. In the language of the sea, black is the colour of death. It is the direct opposite of the white flag of surrender. Navies would sometimes use a black flag to signal that they would give no quarter, meaning they would take no prisoners. By flying the black flag, your ship is making a promise of violence. It is announcing to your target, "We are not bound by the laws of any nation. We are a society of our own, and we live by our own rules." Even more terrifying is the red flag. A red flag is a signal of pure rage. It means that the pirates will give absolutely no mercy, and that they intend to kill everyone on board. It is a declaration of total, merciless war. And then there are the symbols. The skull and crossbones is the most famous, and its meaning was instantly understood by any sailor. The skull is death, the crossbones the same, but there were many variations, each a unique brand for a particular pirate captain. You might see a skeleton holding an hourglass, a message that your time is running out. You might see a bleeding heart being pierced by a spear, a promise of a slow and painful end. The famous pirate Calico Jack Rackham used a skull above two crossed swords. Blackbeard used a skeleton figure, toasting the devil with one hand and spearing a bleeding heart with the other. The entire purpose of this flag, you realise, is to make a real fight unnecessary. Piracy was a business. A bloody battle meant damaged ships, wasted ammunition, and a dead or wounded crew, which would reduce the number of men to share the work and the prize. The ideal pirate attack was one in which no one got hurt. The Jolly Roger was the tool to achieve that. It was an advertisement. The more fearsome a captain's reputation, and the more terrifying his flag, the more likely a merchant crew was to surrender without a fight. The flag said, "We are what you fear most. We have left your world and its laws behind. We do not fear death, so you should certainly fear us. Surrender your cargo now, and we may let you live to see another day. But if you resist, we will send you all to the bottom of the sea." You watch as the black flag, your flag, rises to the top of the mast and unfurls in the wind. Across the water, you can almost feel the wave of terror that must be washing over the merchant ship's deck. They now have a terrible choice to make: surrender and hope for mercy, or fight and face the violence that your flag has promised. The captain of the merchant ship has chosen to fight. A puff of smoke from his vessel is followed by the sound of a small cannon firing in defiance. His shot is inaccurate, falling harmlessly into the sea. Your captain now gives the order to engage. This is the moment where his authority is absolute, and the entire ship becomes a finely tuned weapon under his command. The helmsman, the sailor steering your ship, expertly manoeuvres your vessel. The goal is not a chaotic, head-on crash. It is a precise naval tactic known as crossing the T. This means positioning your ship so its side faces the front, or, even better, the back, the stern, of the enemy ship. The advantage is immense. It allows you to fire all the cannons on one side of your ship, a devastating attack called a broadside, at the enemy's narrowest point. While they can only fire a few, if any, cannons back at you. On your deck, the scene is one of controlled chaos. The quartermaster shouts orders, and the gun crews work with a practiced speed. They are not just loading simple cannonballs. For the first volley, they often use special ammunition designed not to sink the ship, but to cripple it. They might load chain shot, two smaller cannonballs linked by a metal chain. When fired, the chain spins through the air and acts like a giant scythe, tearing through the enemy's sails and rigging, rendering the ship impossible to steer. Or they might use grape shot, a canvas bag filled with dozens of small metal balls. When fired, it turns the cannon into a massive shotgun, designed to sweep the enemy deck clear of sailors. Your captain waits for the perfect moment. When the swell of the sea lifts your side of the ship, he gives the command. Fire! The world explodes in noise. The roar of a dozen cannons firing at once is a physical force, a deafening thunder that vibrates through the wood of the deck and into your bones. A thick, acrid cloud of black gunpowder smoke instantly blankets the ship, filling your nose and mouth with the smell of sulphur. For a moment you are blind and deaf, caught in a man-made storm. As the smoke clears, you see the devastating effect of your broadside. The merchant ship's main mast is cracked, its sails are in tatters, and there is chaos and confusion on its deck. They are crippled. Now you move in for the final phase. Your helmsman brings your ship right alongside the stricken vessel. Men stand ready with grappling hooks, large, heavy iron hooks attached to thick ropes. They hurl them across the gap, and the hooks bite deep into the wood of the other ship's railing. With a great heave, your crew pulls on the ropes, and the two ships grind together with a sickening crunch of timber. They are now bound together, a bridge created for the boarding party. While this is happening, a few of your crewmates with steady hands have climbed high into the rigging. They are the sharpshooters. From their perch, they use their long rifles to fire down onto the enemy deck, targeting any officers who are trying to rally the crew. Then, the quartermaster gives the final order. Boarders away! With a great cry, you and a dozen other men swarm over the railings. You have a pistol in one hand and a sword in the other. You know your pistol is good for only one shot, after which it is often more useful as a club. The real work is done up close with cold steel. The fighting is a confusing, desperate flurry of action, but it is usually very brief. The merchant crew is demoralised, outnumbered, and has little motivation to die for their captain's cargo. Faced with a wave of determined pirates, they quickly throw down their weapons and surrender. The fight is over in a matter of minutes. The captain of the merchant ship formally yields. Silence falls, broken only by the groans of the wounded and the crackle of small fires. The adrenaline begins to fade, replaced by the overwhelming smell of sweat, fear, and gunpowder. The prize is yours. With the captured ship's crew subdued and locked away, the adrenaline of the fight gives way to a focused and surprisingly disciplined process. This is not the chaotic, free-for-all looting you might have imagined. The quartermaster is now in complete command of the prize, and the first rule of piracy is strictly enforced. All plunder belongs to the company as a whole. You learn that any pirate caught hiding even a single coin or a small piece of jewellery for himself before the general division would face the harshest punishments. To be caught stealing from your crewmates was the ultimate betrayal. The entire system of trust and fairness that held the pirate brotherhood together relied on every man being honest at this crucial stage. The quartermaster and a small trusted team begin a thorough inventory of the captured vessel. You now see what plunder truly means. It is rarely a chest overflowing with gold coins. The real treasure is the cargo. The hold of the merchant ship might be filled with massive barrels of sugar or tobacco from the Americas, precious indigo dye from India, or fine silk textiles from the East. These goods were the bulk of the wealth, worth a fortune to the right buyer. But the plunder doesn't end there. The ship itself is a source of immense value. Its cannons, gunpowder, and cannonballs are vital for your own vessel's strength. Its sails, coils of fresh rope, anchors, and carpentry tools are all precious naval stores that are difficult to acquire on the open sea. Even the personal belongings of the captured crew and any wealthy passengers are collected. Their clothes, their wigs, their silver buckles, and any money they have are all added to the communal pile. Nothing is overlooked. Once the inventory is complete and all valuable goods have been transferred to your ship, you and your crewmates sail to a pirate-friendly port. This might be a bustling, lawless haven like Nassau in the Bahamas, or a quiet hidden cove where shady merchants are willing to trade. Here, the quartermaster and captain will negotiate the sale of the captured cargo, turning the barrels of sugar and bolts of cloth into hard currency. When all the goods have been sold, the most important ritual of pirate life begins. The entire crew is assembled on deck. The quartermaster stands before you all, with the total sum of the profits. The first order of business is to pay the ship's debts to its own crew. The compensation fund is opened. The man who lost an eye in the last fight is called forward and given his 100 pieces of 8. The man whose arm was crippled by a musket ball is given his payment. This promise, written in the articles, is always honoured first. It is the bedrock of your society. Once the wounded have been cared for, the remaining wealth is divided among the rest of the crew according to the shares laid out in the articles. The quartermaster, holding a list of every man's name, calls you forward one by one. There is no secrecy, no backroom deals. The process is completely transparent. The captain receives his 2 shares, the quartermaster his 1.5. And then it is your turn. You step forward, and the quartermaster counts out your single full share of the prize into a heavy cloth bag. You feel the weight of the silver and gold coins in your hand. It is more money than you have ever seen in one place. It is more than you could have hoped to earn in 10 years of honest, back-breaking labour on a merchant ship. This is the moment that makes it all worthwhile. The fear, the boredom, the risk. It was all for this. This bag of coins is not just wealth. It is independence. It is respect. It is your reward, earned as a free man and given freely by your brothers. You now have your share. For the first time in your life, you are a wealthy man. Your ship is safely anchored in a harbour teeming with activity, and the long, disciplined months at sea are finally over. Now, the time for work is done, and the time for the merry part of a short life and a merry one is about to begin. The call goes out for shore leave. You and the rest of the crew pile into longboats and row towards the beach. The feeling of setting foot on solid ground after months of the sea's constant motion is a strange and wonderful sensation. You have arrived in a place like Nassau, in the Bahamas, the unofficial capital of the Pirate Republic. You quickly see that this is not a clean, orderly colonial town with cobblestone streets and government buildings. It is a chaotic, sprawling settlement of ramshackle wooden taverns, canvas tents, and hastily built huts, all crowded along a sandy beach. The air is thick with the smells of roasting meat, cheap rum, tobacco smoke, and the sweat of hundreds of unwashed bodies. There are no police here, no Royal Navy patrols, no governor to enforce the law. This is a place of absolute freedom and absolute chaos. Your share of the plunder, which felt like a fortune on the ship, now feels like a fire burning a hole in your pocket. You and your crewmates head for the place that is the heart and soul of any pirate haven, the tavern. Inside, the noise is deafening. The room is packed with pirates from a dozen different ships, all drinking, shouting, and laughing. You push your way to a rough wooden bar and trade one of your silver coins for a bottle of rum. Not the watered-down grog from the ship, but the raw, powerful spirit. The drink is strong and burns on the way down, but it is the taste of freedom and success. You see that a pirate's money is spent as quickly and fiercely as it is earned. In one corner of the tavern, a group of men are gambling, throwing dice against a barrelhead. Men who were brothers at sea, who would die for one another in a battle, are now intense rivals in a game of chance. You watch a man lose a month's worth of hard-won pay on a single roll of the dice, only to laugh, buy another drink, and challenge someone to a new game. This is the pirate mentality, you realise. Their life is a constant gamble. And so is their money. They live with the ever-present threat of a violent death, so the idea of saving for a future they will likely never see seems pointless. The philosophy is to live for this exact moment, with as much intensity as possible. A short life, but a merry one. You spend your silver on things you could only dream of at sea. You eat freshly roasted pork until you are full. You buy a new shirt made of soft linen to replace your ragged, salt-stiffened one. You visit a merchant who caters to the pirate trade, and buy a fine new pistol and a bag of lead shot, investing in the tools that will help you earn your next fortune. For a week, life is a blur of drinking, eating, gambling, and spending. The disciplined order of the ship dissolves into a riot of individual freedom. But it cannot last. Sooner or later you reach into your pocket and find it empty. Your entire share, a sum that would have sustained a family for a year, is gone. traded for a few fine meals, a new weapon, and a pounding headache. Just as the last of the crew runs out of money, the call goes out from the quartermaster. The ship has been repaired, restocked with fresh water and supplies. It is time to go back to sea. You stumble back to the longboat, your head aching, your pockets light, but with a new pistol at your belt and the memory of a wild week on shore. The chaos of the pirate haven fades behind you, replaced once again by the familiar orderly world of the ship. You are struck by the stark contrast of your new life, a long, slow pendulum swing between the extremes of disciplined work and riotous release. With no land in sight and no ships to chase, the days at sea can stretch into an endless, monotonous cycle. The work of the watch gives your hands something to do, but your mind needs a distraction. You learn that fighting off the immense boredom of the open ocean is as important to survival as maintaining the ship. This is where the culture of your new brotherhood truly reveals itself. The most common and most important pastime is music. You are lucky, as your crew includes a fiddler. He's a man valued almost as much as the ship's carpenter. He's exempt from the most difficult labour, yet he receives a full share of the plunder, all for his skill with his instrument. In the quiet evening hours, after the day's main meal, he will sit on a coil of rope on the deck, and the sweet, mournful sound of his fiddle will drift across the water, a lonely but beautiful sound in the vast emptiness. You learn there are two kinds of songs at sea. The first are sea shanties. These are not for entertainment, they are work songs. When a heavy sail needs to be hoisted, or the massive anchor needs to be raised by turning the capstan, a large wooden winch on the deck, a lead sailor, the shantyman, will sing out a line. The rest of the crew, including you, will roar back the chorus in unison, pulling or pushing with all your might on the final word. The powerful rhythmic beat of the shanty coordinates the labour of dozens of men into a single unified force, making the work lighter and faster. The second type of song is the forecastle ballad. The forecastle, or forecastle, is the forward part of the upper deck, where the crew often gathers during their off-watch hours. Here a man with a good voice might sing a long narrative ballad. These songs tell stories of famous naval battles, of daring pirates, of lost loves back home, or of humorous and tragic events at sea. They are the oral history and the popular music of your new world, passed from ship to ship, and they provide a shared sense of culture and history. Another way to pass the time is with games of chance. When you have no money, you find other things to wager. You might bet your next share of the plunder, your ration of rum for the week, or even the shirt off your back. You see men gathered in small groups playing card games with greasy, well-worn decks, or throwing dice that they have carved themselves from leftover pieces of bone. This is a common source of tension, and the ship's articles have strict rules about it. Cheating is a serious offence, and the quartermaster is often called upon to settle disputes that get out of hand. But perhaps the most important pastime is storytelling. In a world where most men cannot read or write, the spoken word is the primary form of entertainment and information. During the quiet hours of the night watch, you and your crewmates will share stories. They might be boasts, exaggerations of your own adventures. They might be ghost stories, tales of the Flying Dutchman, or other phantom ships said to haunt the sea lanes. Or they might simply be news and gossip, pieces of information picked up in the last port about which governors are offering pardons, which pirate hunters are patrolling the coast, and which merchant ships are expected to be carrying valuable cargo. It is here in these quiet storytelling sessions that the legends of your time are born. Men spin yarns to entertain each other, to build their own reputations and to pass the long, dark hours. These pastimes, the songs, the games, the stories, are the threads that bind your crew together. They transform a group of rough individuals into a functioning community. As you listen to another sailor tell an exaggerated tale of the great pirate Henry Morgan, you begin to think about the other famous stories of your new profession. You hear whispers about captains making their enemies walk the plank, and about burying massive chests of treasure on deserted islands, marked by a secret map. As you spend more and more time living the real life of a pirate, you begin to notice that the wild stories you've heard, the legends that even other sailors tell, don't quite match your daily reality. The truth is often simpler, more practical, and in some ways, far more interesting than the myths. Let's look at three of the most famous legends. First, there is the myth of buried treasure. The image of pirates burying a massive chest filled with gold and silver on a deserted island, then creating a secret map where X marks the spot, is perhaps the most powerful pirate legend of all. But in reality, this almost never happened. You must remember the pirate philosophy. Live for today, for tomorrow you may hang. The money you earned was meant to be spent immediately and wildly on shore leave, not saved for a retirement you would never see. Furthermore, the plunder belonged to the entire crew, divided into shares. A captain who tried to secretly bury the company's treasure for himself would have been immediately deposed, or more likely, killed. It was a violation of the most sacred part of the pirate code, the fair and equal division of all prizes. Why bury gold in the ground when you could turn it into rum, fine clothes and good times right now? The entire legend of buried treasure comes almost entirely from one single, exceptional case, that of Captain William Kidd. Kidd was originally a privateer, a sort of legal pirate, hired by a government with a document called a letter of marque to attack enemy ships during wartime. When he turned to outright piracy, he was declared an outlaw. Knowing he was being hunted, Kidd did bury some of his wealth before sailing to New York to try and negotiate a pardon. He was captured anyway, and the tale of his buried treasure ignited a frenzy that a century and a half later would inspire Robert Louis Stevenson's classic novel, Treasure Island. It is this book, more than any historical reality, that created the myth we know today. The second great myth is that of walking the plank. The image is iconic. A captive, hands tied, forced to walk off a narrow board, extending from the side of the ship into the shark-infested waters below. This, too, is almost entirely fiction. There are virtually no reliable documented accounts of this practice happening during the Golden Age of Piracy. It was an invention of later writers, most famously appearing in stories in the 19th century and cemented in popular culture by J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. Pirates were certainly brutal when they needed to be, but they were also practical. If they wanted to dispose of an enemy, they had much faster and more efficient methods. A simple sword thrust or a pistol shot was quick and certain. Tossing someone overboard required no special equipment. The elaborate, time-consuming ritual of forcing someone to walk a plank was a theatrical invention, not a common practice. Finally, there is the image of the pirate captain with a colourful parrot perched on his shoulder. Like buried treasure, this legend comes almost entirely from Treasure Island and its unforgettable character, Long John Silver, who had a parrot named Captain Flint. While it is certainly possible that a few sailors travelling through the tropics might have acquired exotic pets like monkeys or parrots, it was by no means a standard accessory. A noisy, squawking bird would be a terrible companion during a stealthy approach or a chaotic battle. The parrot on the shoulder is a romantic and charming image, but it is not a historical uniform. You now see the truth more clearly. The reality of your life is not one of treasure maps and talking birds. It is a life governed by democratic articles, a surprising system of compensation for the wounded, and a practical approach to your bloody business. But you also know, with a growing sense of unease, that this unique world you have joined cannot last forever. The great empires of Europe will not tolerate these floating republics of outlaws indefinitely. As you sail the seas, you begin to hear whispers in port towns, rumours of a change in the winds. Governors are offering fewer pardons and more bounties for the capture of pirates. New, powerful warships are being sent from England with a single dedicated mission. The rumours you've been hearing in port towns are true. A change is coming on the winds. The great empires of the world, England, Spain and France, are finally turning their full attention towards you. For years, they were too busy fighting each other to properly police the seas, which allowed the golden age of piracy to flourish. But now, treaties have been signed, and their powerful navies, no longer needed for massive fleet battles, have been given a new target: you. The authorities begin their campaign with a simple but effective strategy, offering a carrot before they use the stick. This carrot is the King's pardon. An official proclamation is issued from London, offering a full pardon to any pirate who surrenders to a colonial governor before a specific date. It is a promise that all your crimes will be forgiven, and you can return to society as a free man, without the shadow of the gallows following you. This offer creates a deep rift within the pirate brotherhood. For older pirates, tired of the constant risk and hardship, the pardon is a tempting exit. It's a chance to take their earnings and live out the rest of their days in peace. Many famous pirates, like Benjamin Hornigold, who was once a mentor to Blackbeard, accept the offer. But for others, it is a trick. They don't trust the government's promises, and they see surrendering as a betrayal of the freedom they fought so hard to win. The unity of the pirate havens begins to crack. Then comes the stick. When pardons are not enough, the empires unleash their full military might. Powerful Royal Navy warships are sent to patrol the sea lanes of the Caribbean and the American coast. These are not the slow, clumsy merchant vessels you are used to capturing. These are frigates, fast, medium-sized warships, built for speed and packed with cannons. They are captained by experienced naval officers and manned by disciplined marines who are trained for combat. Your pirate sloop, so effective against a merchantman, is no match for the raw power of a naval frigate. Along with the warships come determined new governors, sent with the specific mission to eradicate piracy. A man named Woodes Rogers, a famous former privateer who understands your world, is appointed governor of the Bahamas. He sails directly into the heart of your republic, the pirate haven of Nassau, with several warships at his back. He arrives with the official king's pardon in one hand and the threat of overwhelming force in the other. It is a brilliant combination of carrot and stick. Other governors, like Alexander Spotswood of Virginia, become obsessed with the hunt. Spotswood dedicates his resources to capturing the infamous Blackbeard, sending naval ships and soldiers on daring raids, sometimes even outside his own legal jurisdiction. The most bitter pill to swallow is the use of pirates to hunt pirates. Some of the most effective pirate hunters are men who have accepted the pardon. Men like Benjamin Hornigold, who know all the secret coves, the tactics and the weaknesses of their former brothers, are hired by governors like Woodes Rogers to lead hunting expeditions. The brotherhood is now not just divided, it is actively preying upon itself. You feel the world closing in, the options are dwindling, the freedom you fought for is slipping through your fingers like sand. The final act of the Golden Age has begun, and for every pirate still sailing under the black flag, the most pressing question is no longer, where is the next prize? But how does my story end? The Golden Age of Piracy, for all its fire and fury, was a remarkably brief flash in the pan of history. For every man who joined the Brotherhood, the unspoken question always loomed. How would it end? There was no single path. The end of a pirate's career was a story with many possible endings, ranging from the swift and violent to the public and shameful to the surprisingly quiet. For many, the end came exactly as they lived, in a flurry of black powder, cannon smoke, and drawn steel. To die in battle was a constant and accepted risk of the trade. In a desperate fight against a naval vessel or a heavily armed merchantman, a pirate could be killed in an instant, struck by a musket ball, cut down in a sword fight on a crowded deck, or killed by the terrible spray of wooden splinters from a cannonball impact. The infamous Blackbeard, perhaps the most feared pirate of his time, met his end this way, killed in a bloody, close-quarters battle with Naval Lieutenant Robert Maynard and his crew. For some pirates, this soldier's end may have been considered a better fate than the shame of the gallows, a final defiant act in a life lived on the edge. Another fate, even more public and brutal, was the gallows. For the pirate who was finally outmatched and captured by the Royal Navy, the path was swift and certain. He would be put in chains and transported to a major colonial port like Port Royal in Jamaica. There he would stand trial in a special Admiralty court, a maritime court with no jury of his peers. For a known pirate, the trial was a formality. The sentence was death by hanging. The execution itself was a powerful public spectacle. A large crowd would gather to watch the final moments of the infamous outlaws, a grim warning to any other sailor tempted by a life of piracy. To make the message last, the bodies of the most notorious captains were sometimes placed in iron cages called gibbets and left to hang at the entrance to the harbour. A more unique fate a pirate could face came not from the outside world, but from his own brothers. For crimes against the crew, the punishment could be exile. This was the sentence of marooning. The offender would be taken to a deserted island and left with only the most basic provisions: a flask of water, a knife, and sometimes a pistol with a single shot. With that, his former crewmates would row away, leaving him to a quiet, desperate battle against the elements. While survival was not impossible, for most it was a sentence of profound and final solitude. But for every pirate who met a dramatic end, it is likely that many more simply walked away. This was the path of the King's Pardon. Faced with the growing threat of naval patrols, many crews chose to accept the official offer of amnesty. They would sail into a colonial port, swear an oath of allegiance to the crown, and in an instant their life of crime was forgiven. These thousands of now former pirates simply melted back into the world, returning to the lives they had known before. For this silent majority, the Golden Age of Piracy was not a fight to the death, but a single, wild chapter in an otherwise ordinary life. And what of the pirate's ultimate dream? The quiet retirement with a fabulous fortune. This is the stuff of legend, and for good reason. It was almost impossible to achieve. The pirate ethos of live for today meant very few ever managed to save a fortune. The legends of pirates like Henry Every, who supposedly vanished with his treasure to live as a king in a secret paradise, are likely just stories that fueled the dreams of other sailors. So these were the fates that awaited them. A swift death in battle, the public shame of the gallows, the lonely exile of marooning, the quiet escape of the pardon, or the nearly impossible dream of a legendary retirement. With the historical pirates gone from the seas, their reality began to fade. The memory of the brutal working conditions, the monotonous diet, and the constant fear was replaced by something far more romantic and enduring. The transformation from history into legend began almost immediately, thanks in large part to one incredibly popular book. In 1724, while some of the last pirates were still being hunted, a book was published in London called A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates. It was written under the name Captain Charles Johnson, though his true identity remains a mystery to this day. The book was an instant sensation. It was part history, containing surprisingly accurate details about pirate articles, ships, and daily life, likely gathered from interviews with sailors and reports from trials. But it was also part sensationalised drama. Johnson was a brilliant storyteller, and he took the known facts about pirates like Blackbeard, Calico Jack Rackham, and the famous female pirates Anne Bonny and Mary Read, and he crafted them into compelling, larger-than-life characters. He solidified their legends, creating the definitive versions of their stories that we still draw from today. This book was the first crucial step. It organised the chaotic history of piracy into a collection of thrilling biographies. For over a century, this was how the world saw pirates, as brutal but fascinating historical figures. Then, in the late 19th century, a second, even more influential author would take the torch. The Scottish writer Robert Louis Stevenson, looking for an adventure story to write for his stepson, drew upon the legends from Johnson's book and created his masterpiece, Treasure Island, published in 1883. This novel, more than any other work, is responsible for creating the modern myth of the pirate. Stevenson took the single rare historical case of Captain Kidd burying his treasure and made it the central goal of all piracy. The idea of a secret map where X marks the spot is a pure invention of Treasure Island. His most brilliant creation was the character of Long John Silver, the charismatic, one-legged ship's cook with a parrot named Captain Flint on his shoulder. Long John Silver became the archetype for every fictional pirate that would follow. He cemented the idea of the charming, friendly but treacherous pirate rogue, the talking parrot, the treasure map, the moral ambiguity. All of these classic tropes came from this one book. The final step in the transformation came in the 20th century with the rise of cinema. Hollywood took the romantic adventure of Treasure Island and made it visual. Actors like Errol Flynn in the 1930s and 40s created the image of the swashbuckler, the handsome, acrobatic hero who fights with a sword, swings on ropes, and always wins the heart of a beautiful lady. In these films, pirates were no longer dangerous outlaws, they were dashing heroes. This brings us to the pirate we know today, a direct descendant of Long John Silver and Errol Flynn. Captain Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean films. He is the complete package of the romantic myth, charming, witty, and a master swordsman, living a life of pure freedom and adventure. And so, the transformation is complete. The historical reality of the desperate, often miserable sailor who chose a short, brutal life out of a lack of better options has been replaced by the fictional ideal of the free-spirited adventurer. The real pirates may have only ruled the seas for a brief and violent generation, but their legend, the powerful story of ultimate freedom, rebellion, and a life without rules, has proven to be immortal. It is a story we continue to tell ourselves, perhaps because some small part of us still longs for a world with a blank space on the map, marked with an X. Thank you for joining me on this long journey tonight, from the harsh realities of a sailor's life to the birth of a timeless legend. Our voyage through history is now at an end. I hope you'll return as we continue to explore the stories found in the shadows of the past. I wish you a calm and peaceful night.